case is named as South Korean entertainment's biggest mystery. It's still unsolved even decades later. It involves a very complicated mystery of Korea's top celebrities at the time and how everyone intertwined somehow. But ultimately, can we ever find out what happened to supermodel Yoon? Her case is named as the Korean Marylin Monroe mystery. Today's case is going to involve a lot of characters and different cases on top of this case in order for us to take a deep dive into what actually happened. So bear with me today, you guys, because it's going to get really weird and really twisted, and possibly you guys can give some scenarios and theories to what happened to today's victim. I am one of the first ones to translate this in English and report to you guys, so it does take me a while to make these videos. A simple like commenting your thoughts, sharing, subscribing really all helps me to continue to make these videos and help these unsolved cases. So back in the 70s and 80s, there was a supermodel named Yoon Young-sil. Supermodel and actress Yoon was born on July 8th, 1956. Yoon did not come from just a regular family background. Her older sister Oh Soo-mi was one of Korea's top actresses at the time. Yoon herself actually majored in dance, especially back in the 70s and 80s in Korea. The fact that you could major in dance and music was kind of like a privilege. She was also known to be beautiful. She was tall, 175 centimeters, and apparently the average height of a South Korean woman back in those days was 155 centimeters. So for you to be 175 in the 70s and 80s, you were destined to be a supermodel and the stardom. People described her with someone with a sophisticated image with a Western look. And a lot of celebrities back then with like that foreigner image, you kind of didn't look Korean, maybe you looked half Korean. Those images were very praised back then. And following the footsteps of her older sister, she also debuted as a movie star in 1977, the same year she debuted as a model. She also starred in various commercials, endorsements, and even set up her own modeling agency and became a strong businesswoman. A woman starting like one of the first modeling agencies in South Korea was a big deal. So she was a busy lady at only such a young age. I mean, these were kind of like the Hadid sisters of the 80s in Korea. It was now May of 1986. Supermodel Yoon was at the height of her career. She was only 29 years old, living at a luxurious, glamorous town, Apgujeongdong, and at an expensive Hyundai apartment. Now, sometime in May, Yoon's older top actress sister Sumi couldn't get a hold of her. Now, the two, I believe, were living in Apgujeongdong, and they weren't that far away from each other. Yoon was busy. She had a modeling agency. She had a lot of like co-workers under her. She was a movie star, a supermodel. I mean, this is a woman that has like schedules every single day, and she always kept in contact with her agency. It's been a couple days she didn't show up for work. Sumi got very worried, so she decided to go to her sister's apartment to try and check up on her. Now, Sumi claims that when she first arrived at the apartment, it was locked, and she did have to ask someone to pry and open the door. She walked in, and she was actually surprised that the apartment was super clean. It did not feel like Sumi was like rushing out or anything was messy or if there was an intruder or a kidnapper. Like everything was pretty neat and nothing alarming. Of course, if she was kidnapped or something happened, there should be signs of struggle. And professionals say that, I mean, would a kidnapper come back and clean the apartment? Most likely not. So this could kind of tell you Yoon did probably leave her apartment, left to go somewhere to meet someone, and something happened. Her family also confirmed that there was no reports of her having any sadness thoughts, her doing this to herself, or possibly running away. Of course, the family alerted the police and they did try to investigate it, but again, this was back in 86. So it is very hard to trace people like today. Everybody has phones. People are more alert if something like this happened, CCTVs, but no witnesses came forward saying that they saw her. Not only that, but apparently police did not find any suspicions or any traces. And this is also part of the theory that is out there familiar with this Korean Marylin Monroe case. Yoon was a supermodel. She was also a sister of the top actress at the time. And the police never did any briefing, press conferences, never told the media or the family of any updates of what happened to Yoon, or at least the investigation. Now, you would expect if a top star went missing, it would be all over the media, but it wasn't. And apparently, it was only 5 months later, in October, when there was only 1 or 2 articles about Yoon being missing. So you could tell that this was most likely a censorship. Somebody or someone did not want to report her missing. By the way, there was no record of her ever leaving the country through her passport. Now, according to some people, this also could be because it was in 1986, and it was during the time when ex-Korean President Chun Doo-hwan was in power. Now, I did a whole video about this. He was a very infamous communist-like leader in South Korea, and South Koreans wanted democracy. There was a lot of riots. A lot of media was being censored by the government at the time. So any news media that was being released to the public was heavily monitored. So maybe at the time, the government or whoever wanted to not release this information for whatever reasons, maybe political reasons, didn't want people to be distracted. That is also part of the mystery. We don't know why her case was never shown to the media. And her case seemed to go cold from here. Literally, people just forgot about it. People didn't know about it. She is a tall, beautiful, famous lady. You would think that if anybody saw her out in the streets, they would report it. But nope. No signs of her being alive or dead. Now, this is where something more bizarre would happen with this case, and we're gonna enter the web of one of Korea's biggest entertainment mysteries. So going back to Miss Yoon's sister, Sumi, one of Korea's top actresses at the time. Now, she was born in 1950, so she was 6 years older than Yoon. She was born in Korea but moved to Hawaii to live her student life, and in 1969, at the age of 19, she would debut as a theater actress, eventually moving up to a movie actress. Sumi rose to fame because she was known to have that sultry, sexy, beautiful, again, foreign-like image, something that was rare to Koreans back then. If you see her photos, yes, she is a beautiful lady. And in 1973, at 23 years old, she would be casted in a movie called Breakup. It was directed by one of Korea's hottest, biggest directors at the time, named Shin Sang-ok. Director Shin, again, was a very successful, well-educated. He's directed many movies, one of Korea's top movies at the time, and he was obviously married with 2 kids, and his wife was Chae Eun-hee. She was also another top actress in South Korea at the time, or at least a couple years before until she got married. Of course, when she got married to director Shin, a lot of the times back then, women would kind of give up their careers, have kids, and become a supportive wife. And actress Choi and director Shin did meet at his movie set when she was casted a couple years back before they got married. Now, fast forward at the Breakup movie set is when director Shin met Sumi, who was only 23 years old at the time, and they had a 25-year age gap, and I guess they fell in love, and this is when they had a huge love affair. Their love scandal blew up, and director Shin and his wife decided to get a divorce. Of course, being heartbroken that your husband that you've gave up your glamorous life for had 2 kids, now all of a sudden cheating with a younger woman, it was a huge heartbreak for her. I can't even imagine. Though it is said that when actress Choi met director Shin for the first time, she was actually married to another man, and she did have an affair with director Shin. And by the way, the kids she had with director Shin were adopted because she could not have kids. Now, director Shin and actress Sumi went on to live together, get married, and have 2 kids of their own. And this is when the story gets even weirder and more mysterious. So in 1978, Miss Choi, the ex-wife, the previous top actress, she was offered to come to Hong Kong for some kind of a movie project. People that she'd never met before approached her and told her that they wanted to start some kind of a movie project with her. And I guess it was someone that she's never met, and she did feel weird about it. But at the same time, I guess being divorced, trying to get back on her feet, trying to, get back into a movie career, guess she fell for it. Guess she thought this could be one of my next biggest project. It's an opportunity, and she took it. When she went to Hong Kong, these people for her movie project treated her really nicely and eventually told her that, hey, you want to go on a boat ride? Like, we're gonna go see the sunsets and it's gonna be an amazing time. So she agreed, went on this boat, and this is when she would be kidnapped, when later we will find out, by the North Koreans. So all this time, this movie projects were actually North Korean spies trying to abduct her. Now, her story is crazy. And by the way, there was a whole movie made about her and Dr. Shin's abduction with North Korea. There's like a whole documentary about it. But she claims that as she was tricked into going on the boat, she was told by the agents that she was being abducted and taken to North Korea. She obviously says that she was fighting off these agents. She was like, what? What are you talking about? I'm being abducted. And according to her, they even put her to sleep and just took her. It took about 8 days by boat to get to North Korea. Finally, they arrived, and she claims that as she got off, the first person to greet her was the North Korean leader at the time, Kim Jong-il. And there's even a photo proof of all of this, you guys. I don't even know how they got these photos, but of course, she was one of Korea's top celebrities, so this blew up in the media of like, where did she go? Was she abducted? Was she kidnapped? Who did this to her? And like, nobody knew, and it was like this whole media frenzy thing. Now, she did claim that as she arrived in North Korea, she was treated pretty well with luxuries, with nice food and things like that, but you're ultimately abducted. She was held there against her own will, and she couldn't leave to go and see her family. And time went by, and it's been 5 years since Choi was abducted and living in North Korea. Now, the story goes that, of course, Dr. Shin, the ex-wife, and he's a big celebrity as well. He found out that his ex-wife was missing, possibly abducted in Hong Kong. And of course, it's still his ex-wife and the mother of his kids, so he did care. He was like, what happened to her? It's been 5 years. And throughout the 5 years, there were many rumors surrounding Dr. Shin. People were gossiping that the ex-husband was responsible for his ex-wife's murder or abduction or whatever it was. Probably had to do with the fact that he cheated on her, he left her, he had new kids, he maybe wanted to get rid of his ex-wife and things like that. And he really hated having these rumors that was hurting his reputation. So eventually he decided to go and look for his ex-wife himself. And apparently there were also people in Hong Kong that he knew that was part of like his movie business and things like that was persuading him like, hey, come to Hong Kong, like let's try to find your ex-wife. So Dr. Shin, 5 years since his ex-wife went missing, decided to go to Hong Kong and look for her himself and told his kids, I'll bring back your mom, so stay tight. He arrived in Hong Kong and met up with his co-workers or people that told him that he wanted to look for the ex-wife with him. Now fast forward, come to find out these co-workers were actually bribed by North Korean agents and set him up so that they can also abduct Dr. Shin. So now Dr. Shin was abducted and was a victim to the leader Kim Jong-il. Ms. Choi claims that, she kind of lost hope. It's been 5 years since she's been abducted. She was at some kind of a dinner meeting. And one day someone told her, hey, we have a surprise for you. Look at the door. And through the door walked in Dr. Shin. Like, can you imagine seeing your ex-husband walk through the door in North Korea? It's been 5 years. Like, it literally sounds like a movie. And it was in North Korea, now that they're both stuck there, that they would rekindle their romance relationship and would actually get back together. Yes, it literally sounds like a crazy Wattpad story. Like, literally, you've both been abducted by the crazy communist regime and you rekindle your relationship and try to flee together. Now, of course, you guys are all wondering, why the heck would North Korea abduct these two people? Apparently, it was a thing back then when the North Korean leaders would actually abduct abduct people with high level skills. So there's many stories I'm sure you guys have heard, like North Koreans abducting English teachers to become a private English teacher for the leaders, abducting actresses, famous actress from South Korea, abducting famous director from South Korea because he wanted to make North Korean films like #1 globally. So Kim Jong-il at the time heard that director Shin was one of the most best top directors you can ever find in South Korea, and he wanted him for himself so that he can work for North Korean films. And this worked, you guys. So actress Choi and director Shin would work for North Korean films and create one of the top crazy films of the 80s, and even that film that director Shin directed in North Korea when he was abducted won awards in, I believe, Europe. So I guess this was all to make North Korea look really great, you know, the country good. But behind the scenes, of course, I believe in the beginning, director Shin claims that he tried to escape North Korea a couple of times and he was caught and he was punished for that as well. Now apparently there's a secret recording that was taped by actress Choi herself during a meeting with Kim Jong-il. According to her, she says that she risked her life to do this because she wanted to tell the people of South Korea, or at least when they fled, had a chance to flee, that they did not walk into North Korea themselves, or that they kind of like converted to betray their own country, South Korea. Like they needed proof that they were abducted because they were on film, a North Korean film working for them. They won awards in North Korea, but they couldn't speak up and say that, hey, I was actually abducted and I'm doing this against my own will. So in order for people to know that, they needed proof. And apparently this is a real recording with Kim Jong-il voice himself.
자기 말로 자기 뜻대로 이렇게 뜻을 가지고 이렇게 어느 정치단 방송하냐.
Now, according to Kim Jong-il himself, he claims that he was looking for the best top movie director in South Korea and wanted to bring him to North Korea to, again, make North Korean movie higher quality. Now, he claims that it is a little difficult to abduct a male versus a female, so he wanted to have a plan to abduct his ex-wife in an attempt to somehow lure in Shin to North Korea. So he was trying to get director Shin to come and save his ex-wife, and it did work in the end, although it took about 5 years. Now, with this recording, they had solid proof that they were abducted to North Korea, and now they can try to really flee and explain their story. Meanwhile, during this 5 to 8 years that has passed by, we go back to actress Sumi. She is probably like, WTF, like my husband literally left to save his ex-wife, which I'm sure maybe she understood in the beginning, but with him popping up in North Korean films and things like that, she probably thought, oh my god, he left me and fled, left our kids and wanted to be rekindled with his ex-wife. Now she had to raise her kids on her own, and years passed by with no contact with her husband, and she actually later would remarry with a famous photographer. So actress Sumi's new husband was also a famous celebrity photographer as well. So we're talking about all big cards here, like big celebrities. Now fast forward 8 years since Miss Choi was abducted in March of 1986. The Shin couple, Shin and Choi, were in Austria for a movie event. Now, according to Dr. Shin, he somehow convinced the regime, Kim Jong-il, that he really wanted to make this next movie. He had to be in Austria. And both of them tried really hard to gain the trust of North Korean agents and the leader himself. And it did work. And again, when they were in Austria, this is when the couple would be able to finally flee the North Korean agents and the monitoring system they had. Director Shin says that he asked one of the agents that he was gonna go and get something, and the couples fled to the US embassy in Austria and told them the whole story, that they were abducted by North Korean agents and they wanted to get help. And thankfully, they were saved and actually sent to America. Actress Choi says that the day she arrived in America after being rescued, she cried. She says that she's been acting for 8 years just for this day for freedom. Interesting thing, director Shin and Choi decided not to go back to South Korea after escaping North Korea and being sent to America. The Shin couple claims that they did not want to go back to South Korea after all this because instead of protecting them, the government seemed like they wanted to use them for political and media attention. So instead, America offered protection to the Shin couple and they stayed here for 10 years. With the help of the US government, the couple were able to bring in their 2 teenage kids and lived in America for 15 years until they returned to South Korea. Crazy story, right? Like, Miss Choi literally divorced her husband, was abducted, they both were abducted, rekindled their life, went to America, brought their 2 kids, and lived a normal life after that. So how does this all circle back to supermodel Yoon, the Korean Marylin Monroe that disappeared? So this is where the whole rumors and theories and where all the web does connect. Remember, the couple fled North Korea in March of 1986. Only 2 months since the couple fled, supermodel Miss Yoon would disappear in May of 1986. Remember, supermodel Yoon was the younger sister of top actress Sumi, who was married to director Shin. So with no whereabouts of Miss Yoon, the rumor has it that maybe Miss Yoon was like a sacrifice or revenge from North Korea. That they abducted her in order to correct the story or for revenge or try to bring Miss Shin again to try and save the family. But I believe still to this day, she was never seen in North Korean movies, or North Korea never claimed responsibility of this. Or another theory is that the North Koreans actually tried to abduct Miss Sumi, Dr. Shin's new wife, in order to bring back Dr. Shin, but it was difficult for the agents to abduct Sumi for whatever reason, so they decided to abduct her sister, Yoon. So when the news of Dr. Shin and Choi were rescued, actress Sumi would try and register her kids that she had with Mr. Shin to the official government, so I guess registering them as a family. I guess she didn't do that previously. Maybe Miss Sumi was shocked that they came back, that they were rekindled, and now she wanted to register them as a family officially so that maybe it could give her a little bit of peace, or maybe she felt like her husband needed to own up to the years that she's been taking care of kids, maybe for financial reasons, child support, something like that. If I was actress Sumi and I did not know what was going on, I would be angry too in a way. Of course, they were abducted against their will, but still at the end of the day, now you're having your missing husband of 3 years saying that he rekindled with his ex-wife and is not going to be returning to South Korea to see his second kids that you had with him. That would still be a slap in the face. And another strange thing happened to Miss Sumi's new husband, the celebrity photographer. So 1 month since her sister went missing and 3 months since her ex-husband was found, Sumi and her new husband, the photographer, decided to get a divorce. I guess for whatever reasons, the marriage did not work out. And in July of 1986, so 1 month since they declared that they were going to get a divorce, the photographer, Mr. Kim, says that one night, the Korean NSA, National Security Agency, came to his house in the middle of the night saying, "The Shin couple has fled. You need to come with us." Photographer Mr. Kim was actually a French citizen, so he had a French passport. And with no explanation, in the middle of the night, he claims that he was taken to the airport and deported to the United States. He's not even an American citizen. And years later, people try to interview photographer Kim, since he's now, I believe, back in Korea. People are like, why were you deported? What happened? What did they tell you? And he still, till this day, claims that he has no idea why. Nobody explained to him that the South Korean government somehow got involved and just deported him randomly. Is he even related to this case? I mean, he's only married to Miss Sumi, but it was as if somebody was trying to punish people around Miss Sumi, or at least Mr. Shin. Photographer Mr. Kim says that, it's till this day, it was such a traumatic experience for him that it is hard for him to actually talk about it. So to recap, in March, the couple are rescued. May, supermodel Yoon disappears randomly with no trace of where she is. July, photographer Kim gets deported. Can all these scenarios involving the same web of people again be a coincidence? I mean, I say not. Now, the only other possible explanation could be is from her last interview before she went missing with the magazine. She claims that she was actually married but fell into a scam marriage, where it states that she married a foreign man named Billy, and turns out his whole story about who he was, what his parents did, was all fake. And in one excerpt, it does say, "I want to go to a stranded island," referring to the heartbreaks that she went through with the scam marriage, but no other info on this other than the old magazine interview. So could it be that because of her heartbreak, she left on her own? I am sure there's a lot more to this story, but people just don't know. Like, there's a lot of missing puzzle pieces here. Miss Sumi said that she was going through so much in her life that I believe she even was charged and caught with doing marijuana or drugs in South Korea, which is highly illegal there. And in 1992, Miss Sumi would go to Hawaii for a vacation, and it was there when she was killed in a car crash at the age of only 42. I don't know much information about the car crash, but was it natural or was someone behind the car crash as well? I mean, who really knows? Now, most importantly, it's also been 37 years since Supermodel Yoon has disappeared. Until this day, nobody knows what happened, and unfortunately, the statute of limitation for her disappearance reached its limit, so it is most likely that her case will never be solved without active investigators. So we don't even know if Miss Yoon was taken to North Korea, or was her disappearance literally nothing related to this? Is she alive still? And if she is, she would be in her 60s today. And I think that if she was alive today somewhere else, like in America, maybe she was randomly deported, I think it would be easier for her to speak up and come forward and say that she's alive. Unless you were abducted to a country like North Korea, then people would really never know what happened to you, unfortunately. In 2006, director Shin passed away, and in 2018, actress Choi also passed away. So now the characters in this complicated case has passed away except photographer Kim. I do think it is odd that the police did not report this, that the media did not report this, or that something more political went on behind the scenes, and that she had to be, again, like traded off, sacrificed, whatever high security secret government things that are going behind there. I mean, we will never know. At the end of the day, I think it is incredibly unfair for Miss Yoon. She was only 29. She was at the peak of her career and youth, and something happened to her, and nobody right now is able to help her or her family. We're actively looking for her. I think that is incredibly just sad and crazy. And if Miss Yoon is still out there somewhere, she is probably begging to come back home. I mean, there's a lot of rumors, you know, like about Marylin Monroe, that she was linked to the president and she was being silenced. Nobody knows who did this to her or she did this to herself. There's a big mystery around it. And just like that case, Miss Yoon's case also involves maybe the presidents and the governments. I'm sure she wants to be found and tell the story of what happened to her. Let me know what you guys have thought about today's case, and what do you think happened, really happened, and could all these cases be a coincidence, separate cases, or be related? Thank you so much for watching, and see you on my next video.